This is part two of the discussion that we started yesterday on how horses, when horses, why horses find it easier to respond to dominance, some more than others, and whether or not these submissive characteristics can be noticed. And I think that, thanks a lot. And then I guess I need that laptop, right, to see what's happening.
I haven't got it on yet.
Okay. So, sorry for the interruption there. I have been giving a lot of thought to this, and one of the things that there's kind of the issue of animals, horses in particular, animal welfare, but the condition of the horse's mind and the condition of the horse's relationship to people is something that's been on the mind of people who train and love horses for many, many years, centuries actually. You can go back as far as as far as Xenophon and some of the early Italian writers that are known and whose involvement with horses was primarily for agriculture at that point, for sure, but also primarily military purposes. And so whether the ends justify the means, or whether for other types of labor, whether it's carrying goods or transporting people, it hasn't escaped notice over time when the plight of horses and the perception that they have no voice has reached the attention of people who position themselves to do something about it. Most notably Anna Sewell in 1877. I think her book Black Beauty was probably one of the most effective. Yeah, I think that's fine. Okay, thanks. Her book Black Beauty was one of the most effective and enduring. It's known as a children's classic in some ways now, but it was intended to be written for the people who worked with horses at the time, driving horses and draft horses, pulling horses that were subjected to the use of a bearing rein in their harnesses and in their daily equipment. The hours were long and the conditions were tough, and the whips were used almost as a matter of course. And her book has, and the subsequent movie, I think, has had that. It serves as an enduring reminder that the horses are here to help us. And I am reminded again that the effort that Bill put into his own desire to speak for the horse and to remind us that the horse is here to help us, and the horse is here to have, certainly now in a different capacity than when we were first using horses to clear land and to fight wars and bring the goods from the woods and from the towns to the country and the country to the towns. People were, in fact, to say nothing of the U.S. mail from Missouri out to Sacramento. The Pony Express, which I don't know if the Pony Express was actually a precursor to the endurance, the sport of endurance riding and endurance horses, the use of endurance horses, and Arabs for endurance and others. But there are things we do now that come right out of and evolve from the dressage and jumping, right out of the early training. And particularly, I'm thinking of Caprilli, but there are many others all through Central Europe and Asia where horses were used to defend territory, to defend individuals, to defend communities. And they do it with us and for us, and they do it willingly. I'm going to have to get right back to Bill Dorrance and what he had on his mind in this book here. This is an old and loved copy of a book that I wrote for Bill back in 1999. So I wanted to have it here for you to see again, and to know that this book is something that Bill had in his mind to write for many years, and I was just at the right time, at the right place to help him with it, and it was a pleasure. This is one of the interesting points that he made. It's on page 198, and I'm going to read it to you. It's in a gray block of text, and he put a lot of thought into every sentence on every page in this book, and this little section here is 3 paragraphs, and I'm going to read it to you now. And he begins by saying here, there's bound to be problems coming up for some people when they approach a horse with rigid ideas they're expecting him to fit into. The actual facts of things concerning a horse could appear to be to those people to be this rigid way. But if they're thinking like this, then they haven't got things understood from the horse's point of view. And I'll say yet. You'll learn about your horse's point of view by spending time getting to know him and seeing how he responds to your feel, because feel is what makes it possible for him to understand what's expected of him. What we want to keep right at the top of our thinking is to have the horse's attention on what we're doing and needing him to do, and to have our ideas clear to him in every way. I can't think of another way to get this across any stronger, except, maybe, to follow with our main idea for this book about true horsemanship, which is through feel, and which has already been stated here in print many times and explained in various ways. I'm still looking for ways to improve on how this could be put across to people, because there is nothing more important to the horse than feel. It's what they look for in other living things and how they live, and maybe it's the reason that they're still around. With everything nowadays as speeded up as it is, I've often wondered if there isn't something real important that people can learn from the way that horses interact. When feel is operating in the horse the way it was set up to work, there's no part of it that's got anything to do with mix-ups about force or fear or resistance. They understand each other, there's no question about that. I'm not sure on this, but I'd rather think there's something the horse has to contribute to this world that's a little further up the line in thought than just having someone sit up there on his back or having people use him in those other ways they found for him to get their harder work done. It struck me as profound that he wanted that included. And in fact, that was one of the last things that he wrote, other than a little scrap of paper that he had me run off at the Xerox machine after we had already had many of the books shipped out and a lot of them still in the packages ready to go. I had to open up those packages and put in a little slip of paper that said true horsemanship is handed down from one friend to another. I think that's the way it went. I still have that somewhere, and in fact, in the blue copy of this book, which is the second edition of the paperback, the story of I wrote down the discussion that we had. He had called me while we were shipping and asked. He said he wasn't quite done with his book. He wanted to make sure that people knew you can't buy horsemanship. You have to have some of the aspects that the horses need us to know. Really, you can't buy the information. You've got to be given it or shown it, or you've got to receive it from someone who wants to give it to you. And that's what he did with me and with many other people who are still out there today working with the horse's point of view at the top of their program, because that's where you get the best results. So for those people and those horses who have a different type of relationship, which perhaps could be said to hinge on, I'm going to turn one of these off. Just a second, it's too much light around here. There we go. For people who are engaging with horses in a way that is hinging a little bit more on pressure or extremes of pressure, extremes of emotion and extremes of time. I think often when people begin to lose their temper with horses, or to have maybe lose their temper with anybody or any animal or any other person. I think perhaps what is behind it is the sense that there's not enough time to do things another way. And that if you are, as they say, under the gun or facing a deadline that is extreme or unrealistic for in terms of the amount of work that needs to be done, I guess whether that's harvesting a field or in a race or in a timed event of some kind, it's not as if the horse really understands that you are on a time schedule. He may not understand the rules of the game or the reason that you are under so much pressure. But I think we're going to find that the horses that submit to pressure and who do better at accepting the extremes of human presentation, we could call it that. I've decided not to go into too much detail about the things that are done that would put this into an X-rated presentation. I put the PG warning in there only because some of the things that that go on are grisly, really, really grisly. So this is not the point. Not only do I not want to educate people who don't know about those things about how to do them, I don't want to celebrate the transgressions against the horse in any way by bringing extreme acts and extremely disgusting things that are done to horses to advance the personal gain of the people doing it. That is not always the case, but I've decided to just talk instead about from the horse's point of view and to help people understand why horses can be unfairly taken advantage of, because their setup internally is to want to get along. A herd animal understands that survival, real survival, so that they don't have to, it's not them against the world, where self-preservation has to be put into the top of their behavior. But survival is in the numbers. A lion obviously has his pride, he has his family, he has his territory, but and I guess they do hunt in groups at times, but it's nothing like the experience that a group of horses has that is being hunted. Hold on a minute. Sorry. Oh, good Lord. So the experience of being hunted is probably not so bad if you can go 35 miles an hour. There are not a whole lot of animals that can top that. There are certain cats that do, and I think that when many millions of years ago, when horses were the size of small dogs and foxes, the cats that were out there probably ate quite a few of them. But nowadays, you know, a mule has no problem going after a coyote or a mountain lion, and a horse has no problem kicking a border collie either. The ranch dogs are taught right away that, you know, where as predators they rank with horses, not the same as they do with cattle. They learn that immediately. So the type of character in a horse that is, I've noticed, very much apt to put up with what somebody might consider an excessive penalties for doing their best. We're not talking now about horses that have learned to fight people. I'm just talking about horses that are doing their best, and their best is not enough. And the type of horses that I've noticed that are like that are often young and unsure, looking for direction, and afraid, and not able to do what's expected of them because they haven't gotten the message clearly about what posture they should be in, or where to put their feet, in what order, at what speed, and when. And in the end, and I'm hoping that people who find it challenging to be patient with horses also understand that that is a decision. If you are impatient with horses, you're probably impatient with yourself, probably impatient in traffic, probably impatient with people and circumstances in a whole range of other circumstances and parts of life. That is not a crime. It's not anything to, you don't need to go to the psychiatrist to consider yourself broken because you're impatient. We are living in a society and at a time in history that is an impatient time. I can only suggest that that no one suffers as much as the impatient person. Maybe it's arguable that the people they unload on, or the people they are impatient with or cruel to or unfair to, maybe they also suffer too. But the real hard spot is in the person who is that way. And there's no amount of being impatient that will bring peace to someone who suffers from impatience. And it is an affliction. It is a condition that is, in the end, it's a choice. And the choice of how to be is one of the great things about being a human being. To be able to change your mind and change your habits and change your ways, to be able to live in a more harmonious, agreeable, contented state is one of the great capacities that we have as people. There are many, many, many reasons that horses can anger somebody. But the thing that people often don't understand is that the horse isn't doing it on purpose. He's not doing it to you. If it feels that something is being to you, that's taking it personally. And if the rest of life has taught you to take things personally, and you snap when the horse doesn't do what you want because you feel, and by snap I mean lose your temper, or act out or punish the horse for not understanding you, it can help sometimes to just take a step back, take a breath, hand the lead rope to somebody else, and then maybe at another time when it's not quite so fresh and quite so upsetting, you could ask yourself why you would give your power to a horse to let you get that mad. The horse doesn't ask to be there. He doesn't ask to be in our barn, in our program, in our dressage court. He doesn't ask to be in our world. We put him there. And so as a, and those of us who work with horses, we could have chosen something else to do. So all of these things, what I'm trying to get at is to help people understand that whatever your goal is for that horse, if you can begin to think in terms of educating him, and if you don't quite know how to do that in the way that you want, ask someone who knows a little bit more or a little bit different way of doing things, and your results are going to get right. They're going to come right into line with your vision. The results the horse can give you, the performance or the cooperation, which they're set up to want to cooperate. In groups they want to cooperate. Sure, they will squabble, they will fight, they will bicker over food. Most of the times when you see horses not getting along, for example, they actually don't have enough room. And issues about crowding the gate or fighting over food or something will maybe give you an impression. Or horses that are possessive of another horse, acting insecurely about what other horse can be near their friend and things like this. The environments that we provide for them are so much different than the environment that nature set them up to feel comfortable in, that some of the ways they've adapted could give us the impression that they are perhaps a little bit more dominant over the others or things like this, but their behavior is absolutely affected by the circumstances in which we put them. So if you're struggling with a relationship with a horse, which is what we have. If you're his trainer or you're his owner, you're the one who cleans the stall or deals with them on any level. Veterinarians or farriers are included in this industry, in this network of human beings that interact with horses and may or may not feel good about it a lot of the time. I think some of the things, in addition to feeling that there's no time, not enough time to get the job done that you have in mind, often it is focused on competition and getting results for owners and things like that, and in many different sports. But even if it's just getting a set of shoes put on a horse that's upset, many people who are trying to help horses in this way, be the guy who puts their shoes on every 6 weeks, you can get very impatient. Now, the horse doesn't know that you've got a tight schedule. He might feel your impatience, but he might not understand how to process the fact that not only are you late for the next horse, he doesn't know that maybe you just had the engine light come on the way to that job. He doesn't know that the last horse kicked you in the leg and that, knocked over all your nails, your last keg of nails. He doesn't know anything about it, any more than you know that he might have just been purchased 2 days before and that he'd been with the same group for 5.5 years. And now he's standing in cross ties for the first time and has no clue what anybody paid for him or what's expected for him after he gets his first set of shoes on. So these are the types of things, if you can expand your capacity to see the horse from his own point of view and to have a little more empathy for yourself as somebody who might be responsible for putting food on the table for other people, for taking care of parents that are elderly, meeting deadlines. Maybe you've said yes to too many people on an unreasonable deadline. Maybe other things have come up in life that were completely unexpected for you. Bills, loss of a friend, any number of things that could put you in your own personal crisis that the horse has no idea about. And I think, as a rule of thumb, when we start to think about making a horse do something, I think what needs to be figured into it is, are you ready for what's going to come back when you just march in with, I'm going to make you do this, or else? Or else what? If you don't do this, I'm going to do this. The horse understands that relationship. If I don't understand this guy or this woman, I'm going to get my butt kicked hard. All right? They learn that from experience. But it doesn't make them any more able to give rational thought and apply a calm understanding to the challenge of wondering how to satisfy the energy and the request that's coming at them with the implicit message, if you don't get it, it's going to hurt. So this creates a kind of pressure on a flight animal that makes them want to do one thing, and that is be away from you. So I think sometimes that's also challenging when it's your job and you really can't let the horse get away from you. He might like to go and run half a mile to get out of your way because your energy is telling him that he's in trouble before he even begins to try to understand what you want. And maybe there's also leftover things that may have happened from the day before. Maybe in the last training session, maybe you got hurt. Maybe in the last training session, he knocked you down because another horse was coming after him. All of these things are important to consider from the horse's point of view because he really can't understand your point of view. He didn't ask to be put in the circumstances that he finds himself in, you see. So maybe as a rule of thumb, not that you have video cameras in every corner of every barn, but maybe if you're struggling with your behavior toward a horse or toward horses in general, maybe it would help to imagine that you're always watched. You're always watched. Would I want someone to see me do that? Some people don't care, and that's okay. And I'm just trying to help the people who are ready to be helped. I'm not trying to change the world. I can't do anything more than change me. I know the things about myself that need attention and that need, I think, adjustments to bring me in line with the person I feel better being. That's my job. I'm doing that morning, noon, night, whenever I think of it, whenever I see myself, whenever I hear myself starting to think or about to speak in a way that I know that I might regret. That's when I kind of check back and I wonder what's driving that. Why would I want to go and behave that way? It's not attractive. It's not going to make the end result any better. I'm going to be participating now in a mess that I'm about to create. Yuck. That doesn't sound like much fun, does it? So the thing to remember, if you're someone who has experienced the humiliating and frustrating experience of asking a horse to do something or telling him to do something and not getting what you want right now out of that animal, it could perhaps be a good idea to see if someone can help you. Get the horse to understand or present yourself in a way that the horse will understand you better than he does at the moment. That's really where I'd like to go with this, because the horses that can't submit easily are the ones that have had too much negativity, too much pressure. They've already learned how to be and to deliver back the kind of force that they've been receiving. Older horses, particularly studs or high-powered athletic horses that have tremendous skill in their sport, a lot of those horses are under enough pressure to break them, and they do break. They break and they break down, and sometimes they turn around and start breaking people up too. Let me see right here if there are some questions. I have to bring this a bit closer. Thanks. Just a second here. Let me see if there are any questions here. So, question. Hello. Do you have any questions that I could answer about ways to get your point across and ways to get your way, so to say, with a horse? Have him do what you want without having to resort to violence or to the decision to put him in pain to get results. Hey, by the way, pain is intimidating. Pain is intimidating. That's why it works. And if you think about how many millions of dollars are made each year from the sale of things that are actually designed to hurt a horse. Okay, you can look at the in the bit departments in the South and Southwest. You can look in the spur departments all over the world. You can look at the devices that are created to restrain and control and bind horses up so that they can't use their strength and use their necks to free their limbs to behave in ways that are challenging. Millions and millions and millions of dollars change hands every year connected to the sale of equipment that actually just underscores the fact that there are an awful lot of people that really don't understand the animal, don't understand how to get what they want without intentionally confining him or hurting him or setting him up to run into pressure that he won't understand until the acute application of pressure causes him to either slow down or give in. That is, even if he can understand what it is that you want from him. Usually it has to do with turning and stopping. And there's, okay, Liam, I'm just wondering why horses put up with humans at all. What do they get from us that makes it worth adapting to our demands? Oh boy. It's in their nature to get along, Liam. It's in their nature to get along. They're curious animals. And just as much as their dollar value, not that we're talking about dollars, any type of financial currency that you want to apply to a horse, is only going to be decided and determined. It's going to be determined and live somewhere between the cost of semen to produce a horse, added to the cost of bringing him into the world and training him, and the cost of what he is on the butcher block after his life, however long it is, per pound dead. So the idea that between birth and death, a horse is going to serve us until he's served for dinner. That's really the bottom line. He's going to serve us until he's served for dinner. And I hate to say it that way, but the facts support that statement. And I would say, why do they put up with us? Because just as I made a little timeline between birth and death and how to establish an exchange rate based on what it costs to produce them on one end and maintain them, and the cost of the meat that they're worth on the other end, that spectrum is one spectrum. The other spectrum from their point of view would be, I'm really interested in that thing. It's moving. I hear a sound. I smell something funny. I can feel the ground moving under my feet. Somebody new is coming into the barn. I can hear the difference in their footfall. I can feel that they don't weigh as much and don't walk in the same way as that other guy. I can hear that wheelbarrow. I can hear that stall fork or that push broom that clears the aisles. They are aware, as many people don't understand. They depend so much on us for food and for shelter because we confine them and we put them there. Why do they put up with us? Because if they can stand to put up with us, they're going to get fed twice a day or 3 times a day. It's in their nature to survive, and to survive means getting along. And getting along means relying on your senses. I sure hate to bring the bad news to people who love to play music for their horses. Maybe you are playing it for them, maybe you're playing it for yourself, I don't know. But when you take the stillness out of a horse's environment so that the sound of a little mouse or the sound of a bird, the sound of the stillness of the night is something they no longer have. Just the din of AM or FM radio or your favorite pop songs. There's nothing wrong with listening to a radio, but it changes who they are. Why do they put up with us? Because we feed them. What is it that they do? How is it that they're put together to notice us or to be curious? If you've raised a few foals or been around the young ones, you'll see that movement brings them closer. If you walk into a pen that's got 20 colts in it, some of them, they'll go up behind the other ones. The bolder ones will come forward. You'll see their characters emerge in a group. They'll tuck a nose right behind an elbow or right behind a wither. They'll step in behind a neck and peek over. You'll see right there in a group of, say, 6 or 8 or 10, who's got the bolder character, who's more curious, who's going to come right up and see what you smell like, who's going to take a hold of your coat and see if they can put their teeth on it. I'm talking about the babies now. And then the odd thing is, you take your hat off or you remove your jacket and suddenly they all fly out of there like birds just jumping up off a cornfield, They have a structure in life that is a balance between curiosity and fear. Curiosity and fear is also, right on the flip side of that fear, is the question about what is it that just scared them and let's go have another look. They're always going to come back 99% of the time if you just wait on something that is spooking a horse. They're going to come back and want to see just what that was. Or if you get frightened of something, or you jump out of the way of something. Sometimes a horse will come up and say, hey, what was that scared you there? What's going on? So these are the type of things. They have no choice but to put up with us nowadays. You know, if it were really like some people say, and you could wander out and just have a horse come up to you off 10,000 acres and say, oh, hi, you know, I'm a pushy horse. Why don't you halter me and I'll go with you all the way back to town. If that were really happening, the BLM wouldn't be using helicopters to round them up. And in fact, that is what they do. And that's a fact. And so the wildness in a horse is, you know, you can get other types of wild animals also, somewhat more difficult. It's not quite as, you know, a zebra is some kind of horse relative. I'm not so up on all of that network of genealogy, but a zebra is not a striped horse, but it's close enough in kind that you can see the difference between what can get along and what can't. There's a different kind of an animal there. But the horse itself, I think that's why I started with the page on the quote from Bill that I read at the beginning of this, is that depending on your beliefs, perhaps they were put here for us to enjoy. Perhaps they were put here, and perhaps they are here, and are. There are not many countries that were built, not many centuries, that hasn't made the highest and best use of them as a resource, and as they are still used for hard labor all over the world. You don't have to look too far to really see that the horses are doing, they're pulling their weight and a lot more weight all over the world. And this is why they do try to tell you that they want to understand you. They do try to get along. But a lot of times, what frustrated, angry trainers, frustrated, angry owners who feel justified in hurting them intentionally to teach them a lesson, a lot of times what you're running into in the behavior that you dislike so much, or the resistance that you find offensive, is you're running into the mark of the person that was there last. Okay? Or just like anything else, the horse is going to be able to carry his identity and carry his biologic imperative forward. He's going to be able to be as incredibly genuine with you as you are willing to accept. And if part of what is worrisome or frightening to you about the life in a horse that is more than you can anticipate, more than you know what to do with, it's really important to be honest with yourself, because you hide nothing from a horse. If you're afraid of that horse, you need help with that horse, don't stand proudly with your whip and your guns, you know, to face off with a horse that is a flight animal that you trap and prevent from leaving. If you open the gate, give him enough rope, he'll be happy to move away from you if you're that afraid of him. That will happen. But to take him on as a measure of personal, you're going to bear the standard that you won't be defeated by the horse. Somehow, I'm not sure that that's the light in which he should be seen. Horses learn to become predators only when they have been abused past the point of reason, past the point that they understand it, and they begin to be like and to mimic. Out of the need to survive, self-preservation comes up. They learn defensive, self-preserving behavior to survive. And then when the labels about how they are or who they hurt last or what they've done wrong, you know, when those labels precede them, then, and the war against that particular horse or the war against horses is on in a particular barn, I've seen places where one horse gets the bad rap for everybody there. One horse will do something that hurts some favorite child or scares some favorite trainer or something, and next thing you know, everybody hates the horse. So this is not something that I can defend. It's just something I've observed for years. I've decided not to talk about the things that I've heard. And tonight at dinner, we were talking, and I also decided not to talk about the egregious transgressions against the horses that I've personally witnessed. I can only say that when money is involved, shortcuts are taken that are understandable if you want to empathize with the human's point of view or the owner or the investor's point of view, the overworked trainer, the underqualified grooms and handlers, all of the people who have a reason to interact with the horse in a way that frightens them or has hurt them. Those are understandable vantage points that would make someone want to be aggressive or defensive. But in the end, the harder you are on a horse, the harder he's going to be on you the next time, and the harder he'll be on someone who absolutely, unsuspecting and undeserving, is going to be receiving the mark that you left on them if you're that way. So it's important to try to get this thing turned around. And in fact, many of the horses that I'm asked to come and help have been handled perhaps a little too harshly. Many of them will shut down. Many of them will just close out and give you the body to deal with, sort of like a prisoner of war or another type of victim in our odd human relationships that are often out of balance, often suffering from disequilibrium. I have witnessed many things that are of an unspeakable nature that I will never repeat. But one of the things that I did when I was 8, I was at the Manchester Fairgrounds in Manchester, Vermont, and it was not possible to keep me away from the horse pull. And these Canadians were down there. They were French Canadian. I was surprised. I thought they were children when I went up there, but they were they were every bit grown and adult and very accomplished horsemen. But they were not, many of them were not much bigger than I was at about 8 or 9. And anyway, I was watching men whose throats and shoulders were not much past the stifles on their big horses, and I'm not exaggerating. These were people about 4 foot to 4'6", a whole group of them, and they had massively big horses, and they were whipping them, what I thought was mercilessly. And my grandmother had just read Black Beauty to me, and I thought, well, this is exactly what I should do, is go up and stop this right now. So I was actually on my way to go get involved at the horse pull. It's so silly when I think about it. But the way that they whipped these horses was pretty darn amazing. And then at the end, Ivan Taylor reassured me that the horses could take it. I can't remember all of his exact words. I remember many of them. But anyway, he got me to understand that the horses were going to be just fine at the end of the day, and they were going to get brushed and get a bath and get cleaned up, and they were going to go home and see their friends and have dinner. Now that, when you tell that to an 8-year-old who's watching a horse get beat hard, it's a stretch. It's a real stretch. And these are public floggings, okay? And they still go on. They go on all over the place. They go on in the shows. They go on behind the barns. They go on in private places. It's human nature to demand, and it's human nature to get tough, and it's human nature to not see the try, but just to want results. We are impatient beings, and it's everyone's personal decision how much of that they are going to tolerate in themselves or tolerate in people around them. I was grateful for the counsel and for the input that Ivan gave me in those days, because I went for years. I would go for hours and watch, and many summers to watch these horse pulls and the racing and all the other fancy people that were with the gaited horses back in the day. Very fancy people with very fancy horses. And I learned about putting the hot ginger up the butts on the saddlebreds and putting all the little awful things they did with gear and tack to make horses feel pain to step in certain ways. And I was absolutely horrified. But I had learned to be quiet about it until I was at the Dublin Horse Show last summer. and a year of keeping this kind of thing to myself, I went off. I have to tell you, I did go off. I went off on a guy as he was riding by me. His mare, I won't tell you his nationality and I won't tell you his name, but he just tripped my trigger. I started yelling at him over the fence, top volume. I was so mad. I won't tell you what I said, and I gave it to him. Not once wasn't enough. When he came around the second lap on his course, I blew off at him again. I was so angry. He was on a beautiful big mare, and she had just touched a pole with a hind foot, and she had added an extra stride because he was looking down, because he didn't have his eyeballs over the fence, looking at the fence ahead of the fence he was about to jump, and his dropping his eyes in front of that fence made her doubt her stride, and he added that extra stride, and when she put that there, because of him, not in spite of him, he beat her as they were going. He beat her up for not having the right stride in front of that fence, and Leslie Desmond lost it. In public. Now, I actually was going to go over and have a talk with the guy. So I went around and I was going to meet him at the outgate. He just evaporated and somebody else took his horse, and so help me. I was going to have a talk with him and buy him a drink is what I was going to do, just for having to listen to me. It wasn't pleasant. But one, I don't know who he was. He was probably about 70. One guy came up to me, and he followed me for a little way, and he said, "Well said, lassie." So, I guess you never know. You never know. But a flogging and a beating on a horse, whether it's public or private, whether it's just jerking the bit, reaching over and raking that steel through the bars of their mouth and across those tender gums, or withholding food, or whatever people do to their feet that is unkind, or to their necks and heads and faces and minds, all types of things that are done are not necessarily creating permanent damage. It's very important to understand that. It's very important to understand that people who are doing these things are living in a moment, in a day. It doesn't mean they won't change. If you want to find out what's the driving force behind the anti-smoking campaign, or Alcoholics Anonymous, or any of these Mothers Against Drunk Driving, you'll find out, if you do your homework, that the people who are most interested in changing other people's habits know quite a bit about those habits themselves. Either they were living next to it or they were that way. So I hold out hope beyond anything that the men and women today who beat every horse they worked with, who gave an unnecessary, took up an unnecessary 4 or 5 holes on the drop nose band, on the cinch, who whipped a horse that didn't deserve it, who jerked a stud chain and tightened a bit so the bit's sitting on the molars and there's no relief in sight of anything, who strapped a horse down so his neck is on his chest, chin is on his chest. I hope, and I hold out hope, and I actually can go so far as to say I know. I do know, because I've lived long enough to see it by now, that a percentage of these people, there is a percentage of these people, and I think a good percentage of these people, who are going to really come to terms with a part of themselves that's not getting along with life, with animals. You know, if you dislike and disrespect a horse enough to involve hurting it every day, horses every day, as part of your, I'm going to, see you later, honey, I'm going to the office, and you're going to spend your day thumping on horses and making life more difficult for them than it already is. That's something that's inside a person. It's not just what they do. that moment when they snap and hit a horse. I have every confidence, I really do, that the people who are involved in excessive pressure are subject to excessive pressure in parts of their lives. Could be from childhood, could be from something that was said yesterday on the job or by a spouse, or the way the local election at the city council turned out in your town, or what was served for dinner. Who knows what tripped somebody's trigger? But the point is, I know that there's nobody who's less pleased with the moments of life as they are strung together to make a day and a week. There's nobody who's more upset about being in that, about being the author of that type of treatment of others than the person who's inside it doing it. They might be too drunk to know. They might be too unaware to know at the moment. But for sure, people can change. There's not a doubt in my mind. And if you look at the anti-smoking campaigns and see how many former smokers are behind that, just like, I don't know anybody who's less tolerant of smoking than a former smoker, or less tolerant of alcohol than someone who's either lived around it or used to drink themselves and had to come to terms with the way they treated people they loved or the people they killed in car accidents or whatnot. You got to give people a chance. That's one thing. You got to give people a chance. Not everybody is lucky in the same way and at the same time. And a little empathy for the animal will go a long way, but the place that empathy really needs to be extended is to the people who just annoyed you today, the people who just offended you yesterday. It isn't personal. And if it is personal, then I can tell you what I learned to do a long time ago. You step aside when you see this crap coming, and you let them hit the wall behind you. You don't need to stand and take it. You don't need to decide that your voice and your style and your reason to be in that moment is to defend the world. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. You mind your spot in the world, and it'll be a lot easier for people to learn by watching you take care of the things that you can actually control than stepping in and managing for others and controlling others and micromanaging others and being frustrated that other people aren't just like you. And this is the thing about tolerance and about learning how to get along with animals or people or with the noise in your own head. It's important to remember that not everybody comes from the same place. You don't know what you don't know. And no one can have the experience of another person's shoes. Nobody. I sometimes think when I'm at the airport, thinking at an airport is a good idea. Sorry, I fell down yesterday. So if I look like something hurts, it's because it does. It was very icy around here, and people were falling down. People were falling down a lot, and I was one of them. So excuse the grimace. But when I'm in an airport or a public place, some restaurant or commercial venue, and I just look around, you could speculate for hours on how somebody was raised or what makes them happy or what their greatest grief has been or what their greatest joy is or where they're going and who they're going to go see. I know that might sound odd, but as someone who I am more often in the presence of strangers than not. Than I am in the presence of people I know. Someone who travels a lot is in the presence of strangers all the time. And it's something that comes naturally. I do it with horses too. I evaluate horses for people. I'm one of my most fun and favorite things to do is to come and look at horses that are for people that want to own one. I do that often for people. Try to help them find the right horse. It's a little bit like being a matchmaker. You get to know the person a little bit and quite well, and then you get to know what they want in a horse, and you see if you can find a horse that has attributes, characteristics that will fit well with that person. It's not an easy thing to do sometimes, and that involves learning how to read the horse and learning how to see. And I think really, if any of you out there who have only had one horse or two horses in your life, or you just kind of got your horse life focused around the character of one animal that is in your care, that's a wonderful thing, and that's a lucky animal. But the people just getting into any number of horse sports today, I'm going to encourage you to spend a lot of time around a lot of different kind of horses. And the rescue centers, which are in every state in the union, there are thousands and thousands of places that accept horses and that are using horses for the communities, for the returning vets, for people that are trying to be a little bit more responsible to society as they make their exit from confinement in prisons, which are a lot like box stalls. A lot of times getting together with a horse will straighten a lot of people right out and help them on their journey the rest of the way. So as I have noticed that these huge collections of horses are everywhere to be found. 100 years ago, you had stables and rental facilities and places where you could go ride or rent a horse for work, or you could rent a horse for fun or recreation or work. And now you can have an opportunity to go and maybe give something back to these horses that have come on hard times and don't have somebody speaking up for them or claiming them as their special horse. You can go and learn how to read horses by working at some of these places or just going and visiting a rescue center. They certainly can. There's a lot of places for volunteer energy to go, and in order to really understand how to be accomplished with a horse, the more horses you can be around, the better you're going to be. And I think as well, when we're talking about people who lose their patience and are on a tight schedule and maybe doing things to horses that if they had a little bit less pressure in their life, they might realize a little later they would regret doing, or if they thought they had more time to prepare a horse to do a certain job, maybe they would take more time and bring out less stressful responses from the horse, which in turn brings out a stressful response or an impatient response, an unnecessary whack in the head, whatever it is. All of these things are really they're about us. This is not about evil people who are just lurking behind the next tree getting ready to beat up a horse. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about people who are nice people to sit down and have dinner with. We're talking about people who kiss their husbands, kiss their wives, who love their children, and lose their crap on a horse. That's an outlet for some people, by the way. Is it better for them to kick their kid or kick the horse? That's sometimes a choice that somebody unconsciously makes. Having lost it at the Dublin Horse Show and shouted at this guy for, I don't know, the whole thing was over in about 3.5 minutes, but I'm not one to go publicly shouting. I did that day. Where did that come from? That I broke my own rule. Usually I think before I speak. Not that day, I didn't. And maybe it's not too much to stretch the imagination to suggest that the people who are too hard on horses, if they're not hard on their families too and their friends, or not hard on themselves, maybe it's a habit. Maybe, and probably, they learned it by watching other people do it in an attempt to get the results that they thought they would be able to get by firming up. Okay? There's not a lot more to say about that unless I get into the details of the ways that people abuse horses, which I don't see a constructive reason for that. But the thing I would like to talk about right now before we call it a day on this topic, and I'm sure there's a lot of other things I should be mentioning, and I'm going to get up here and see what you all are saying here. Everyone who beats it. Yes, okay, good one. Everyone that beats and loses it on their horse, it's a lack of knowledge and understanding, I would say so. We are better off doing nothing in situations like that than overreacting. Yes, unless that's emotional muscle memory and that's one's habit, in which case it would require, some self-reflection and some support, usually for somebody to make a big enough change in themselves to give up the anger, the external and public expressions of rage and anger, a black rage where you just, people don't, I've witnessed rages where people don't remember what they did. It's pretty wild. It's pretty scary, actually. But that to give up that as part of a character and part of an outlet, as a pressure release or part of a way to adjust your character, to give up that aspect of yourself. Usually what the people that are able to do that are people that suddenly realize that they are loved, or they have more love than they had before. They have realized that this type of behavior is hurtful to others. They have maybe never thought of this. And often, if you're not in touch with the fact that you're hurting, it's very hard to empathize with the pain you're bringing in the lives of others, animals or people alike. It can be very hard to process rejection, process anger, process negativity, other people's mental disease. The effect of being around other people that are unhealthy is extremely damaging if you're not getting support to keep your own equilibrium, and keep your eye on the ball of your own life. It's one of the great challenges in life, is to learn how to live it well. But I want to talk to you about appropriate firmness in a minute, because there's certainly a time and place to use your full physical strength if that's what's required. This business of just mollycoddling these horses and giving them little kisses and treats and apples and wondering why they've turned into such monsters, there's a cause and effect there. So while I'm shaking my pen at you who lovey-dovey, hand-feeding, goodly-doodly-doodly-doo, you don't know the damage you do to teach a horse to crowd somebody. It's going to set them right up to get a knock in the head. So you want to be sure that the way you offer your love to a horse, and you offer your admiration and your appreciation of what the horse brings to your life, don't set them up to fail by loving them in a way that turns them into a hand-fed dog at the table, please. Let me see. Let's see. Do you think horsemanship in general, worldwide, has evolved for the better in the past 20 years? I don't know what's happening worldwide. I only know what's happening in the Western world. I'd say there's more awareness, yes. I'd say there's more awareness. I don't know that the Humane Society has any more teeth than it did 20 years ago. I know that there are laws on the books that don't matter. I know that there are enforceable laws on the books in this country, in America, is where I'm speaking from at the moment. There are organizations that are well placed and doing a heck of a job to hold politicians and trainers and the industry, the judging industry, and the breed registries to account, and FOSH is one of them, F-O-S-H. Lori Northrup, friend of Sound Horses. You want to see somebody doing a stellar job to bring the education level of trainers and owners up, not pointing fingers and trying to jail people, but educate, help, support, redirect, rewrite. Lori Northrup. You can tip your hat to that lady right there. Friends of Sound Horses. FOSH. There's an organization worth supporting and a lady worth knowing. My hat is off to her. If I were wealthy, she'd get a check a week from me. Fact. There's more respect for that lady than she'll ever know. Okay. Now, I just saw a girl beat her horse with a bat during something at an eventing horse trial last year because the pony refused the second fence in a line due to pilot error. Okay, so sad. Yeah, but so understandable. She's doing what she has seen done. She's doing what she's been taught to do. Yes, okay, it's sad. Good thing the pony has a thick skin. It's sad, and she's young, and so there's a good chance she's going to change. She already is changing, I'm sure. Change is inevitable in a life, okay? Here are a couple of other... Thank you, Nikki. There is the FOSH website. Thanks for that. That is something worth putting some time into, and that is some lady and organization worth supporting, I promise you. She's, well, I'm not going to... You just get in there and have a look at what she's up to, and if the spirit moves you and you've got some extra bucks at the end of the year, that's a good place to put it. She's no BS. Will true horsemanship through feel ever be produced on audio? I could so use hearing this over and over again. I would say yes to that, actually. It's in the works. But not tomorrow morning. I will continue reading parts of it, though. Going to read a little bit more to you this evening. If I don't wear out my welcome, I don't know how long we've been going at this, but if somebody wanted to write down what time it is, I wouldn't cry because the clock is on the other side of the phone. Okay? I hope that you will conclude that the that the picture quality is a little bit better now that somebody showed me how to turn around the phone and tape myself when I can't see the phone. That's my friend Rick who showed me how to do that. So let's talk about appropriate firmness for a moment. Appropriate firmness would start with the punishment fitting the crime. Let's say 7. Okay, so we are at 10:30. This has been going an hour then. Okay, thank you, Gina. So for the oh boy, hang on a second here, folks. I really hate you'd have to witness this. Did I fall? Yes, I did. So on the New Hampshire ice, and I'm not the only one. But I didn't wreck the truck driving home. That was the point. That was the good news. I sure passed enough wrecks. So, for the punishment to fit the crime, the horse in this case having perhaps made what a person could conceive of as an error. Let's talk about horses that bite. That's a real common one. Horses that nip and bite and get punched in the nose for it or slapped in the face. I like the way Tom Dorrance used to say, you were probably too close. No doubt. It's a very, there's a phenomenon, there's a human habit that I've seen in barns everywhere across the world. You hang out, you go over and you have a discussion with your friends at the stable. Everybody likes to hang out near the stall of the horse that bites. Hang out just enough to keep his interest. Try to pet him as he nips. Knock him in the nose. You're not going to fix that problem that way. But that I've seen it. I can't tell you how many times I've asked people, maybe a dozen at least, say, why are you doing that? Just like that. Hey, why are you doing that? What are you doing? Well, look, he bites. Yeah, I see that. Why are you putting your hands up there? Got to teach him a lesson. No. You're actually engaging in promoting the fact that tit for tat, if you set him up to fail so that you can try to train him, you're not helping him not learn to bite. You hit a horse in the nose for biting, you absolutely have not seen the last of it. The biting habits, first of all, horses do bite each other. That's correct, Francine. Horses do bite each other, and they bite each other for a lot of reasons. Horses know when each other are tight, in the nuchal ligament, in the back, on the withers. They need stimulation. Horses kept alone and kept by themselves and not touched, not having had the opportunity to touch and be with other horses, they are sensory deprived all over their bodies. And it's an indescribable type of void. It's a void. And I know that horses prefer to be together than to be separated. So when the only socialization they have is human contact and human affection and human punishment, a lot of time the punishment that you give them is like the sparring that they do with each other. I'm going to bite your lip. You know that game where they stand, they set up, they're squared up, they're not going to move their feet, and they're just going to try to get each other's chin and lip and hang on, or they'll take a halter. They'll try to get those halters off. They try to get you by the side of the cheek with their teeth, and then just enough skin so they can pull it off, and their teeth will slap shut. They're playing, okay? And they're playing, and they enjoy it, and they love it. And when you are standing there at their stall waiting for them to nip you, and then you're going to just give it to them in the nose or punch them in the nose, you're promoting what it is you're trying to stop when you do that. With the young horses, what I do is I take advantage of the fact that they are teething, their mouths are sore, or the teeth are developing, they're trying to erupt a new tooth, pushing out the baby teeth, getting in the new ones. What can really be a great thing to do is you get a tiny little bit, you get a little pony driving bit, and you put it on a leather strap, a little piece of latigo or a saddle string, and you set that one up, and the minute he comes at you with his teeth, you just offer him the bit and slip that over his mouth, over his ears, and set it loosely, not back on his molars. You just set it loosely so that he can suck it up and hold it, and that's the end of your biter. Then, a couple of years later, when you're ready to get on and ride, he bridles himself. I've got a lot of video of that I'm working on. Every time I get around a foal that needs to bridle, I give it to him. It's not that I force his head into a bridle. That's not the point. It's that instead of biting me, and it's very hard to train a horse that's biting, by the way. That's a pain right in the butt. So just give him something. Just give him a pacifier. It's like a lollipop, right? We have pacifiers for dogs, pacifiers for children. Again, it's a multi-million-dollar industry. The design, creation, and sale of stuff for teething animals to put in their mouths and teething people. There's a lot of things that are made for kids to chew on, and puppies too. Nothing worse than feeling those needle teeth go into your ankles while you're trying to do something, make dinner or clean up your living room, than to feel those puppies just gnawing on your ankles. Man, that's worse than a piranha, I'm sure. So let's get back to the appropriate firmness part. Horses that are looked at right in the eye and are held right under the mouth by two reins. Horses that are led by the head and the halter, not by a rope. Horses that are led by two reins back behind the bit, okay? So that the snaffle bit goes like this right up into the roof of the mouth. This type of thing is very, very easy to see how by the time you're standing in that position, you've actually set the horse up to step on the back of your heels, maybe even step on the back of your shoes, and you're taking your next step in your sock. I've seen that happen, actually. So the type of firmness that people will turn around and in a split second deliver to a horse that has hurt them accidentally, and that's an accident. the horse doesn't mean to step on you, but if you've got your feet under his feet, it's kind of hard not to step on someone when they've put their foot under your foot, okay? Now, he's not looking at his feet when he's walking. He's looking where he's going, out to the side. Remember, the horse's eyes are kind of where your ears are, right? So what we want to do is we want to give the horse the respect of walking parallel to him or ahead of him, but not right underfoot, okay? So let's try to eliminate the need for appropriate firmness. And then what I like to do when I feel, don't think I'm above it either. I get mad enough sometimes just to haul off and slug a horse. You can be sure I have that temptation now and again. Very rarely, I have to say, but I do. So who's the one who I need to be firm with first? Is me. I have to be firm with myself about what will this horse gain from me getting after him. And the answer is not much, as long as these current emotions are present. It's the emotional content that drives home the bad part of the message about the physical correction, okay? It can be said that a 200-pound woman or man that falls off their horse and forgets to let go of the mouth, the reins, it can be said that that pain, actual pain, could be equal or more than somebody who spends 5 minutes taking a bit and just jerking on that face until there's blood pouring out of the mouth. Yes, I've seen that. But for the horse that experiences a 200-pound crash and splits their gums and got the same blood pouring out of their mouth, in context of what happened, that's not punishment. It's painful. Painful, for sure. It's going to heal in about the same time as the horse that has his jaws destroyed by somebody who's just indulging in a rage. You know, this happens in every industry. It happens in the reiners, the cutters, the jumpers. It happens in the dressage. It happens in the gymkhanas. It happens in a whole group. Everybody does it. But the horses are still going to heal up. And you tie a horse that has a bridle on, and he's got a halter over that, and you're trying to do the best you can, and you haven't seen that somebody left a nail there or a bucket hook, and he gets his side of his bit caught on that thing, and you got one of these plastic endurance bridles or nylon endurance bridles or some kind of heavy reinforced gear that doesn't break, and you come back and your horse's jaw is destroyed. Is that the same experience as having somebody beat him up in the mouth? No, because the context is different. Probably hurts the same. Probably takes the same amount of time to heal, if it ever does. If you break a jaw, that's another matter. But what I'm saying, and jaws aren't usually broken by human punishment in that way. If a horse ends up catching his mouth on an unbreakable piece of equipment, his 1,000 pounds or 1,500 pounds can snap his mouth, yes. But what I'm getting at is that the appropriate firmness that we have to remind ourselves, if you want to improve and you want to get truly good at horses, you want people to say in the end, hey, why don't you ask Bob about that? He knows. Ask my friend Sal. She's been around a while. She's got some good ideas. Remember those horses she used to have, how they used to be? Well, look at them now. These are the types of things that feel good to people. You want to be able to help people that know a little less than you or that are in trouble with a horse. You want to be open yourself to learn a better way to do something. I'm open. I'm looking all the time for new things I don't know. There are a lot of things I don't know. Don't ever think I know it all. I don't think that. I know I don't. And horses and people who really understand horses is one of the most exciting things you can be around if you really love them. And this gets into the appropriate firmness discussion, because the first place that appropriate firmness should be applied is to the person wearing my shoes. And I've learned to do that so that I don't anymore, as much as I used to, say or do things that I regret. Why have a list of things that you do and say that you regret? Why have a list of friends that you miss because you were so thoughtless or so explosive or so rude or so selfish that you couldn't think about the effect of your words before they came flying out of your face? Why not? Because maybe no one told you it was important. Why not? Look back to the beginning of how you started to learn about how to interact with people. Maybe what you saw and heard and experienced in former times was unpleasant. Maybe the unpleasant things you saw and heard are the ways that you learned to be. Maybe that feels normal. Doesn't mean you have to stick with it. Let me see here. Oh yeah, okay, Joanne, I get it. I saw a horse turn and play with a stirrup and hook his bottom jaw. Yes. Yes. I've seen that too. I don't know what to say about that, actually, except it was probably an English stirrup, and if you get a breakaway stirrup on your saddle the way you ought to for your own safety, it'll be a lot less likely for a horse to be stuck there. I have also seen that. That's a bad one. That is a bad one. And I'm just reminded to say this, speaking of equipment and bits and things. These full cheek snaffles, by full cheek snaffle, I'm going to draw the thing because I don't really know if you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to draw it right here. Just a second. Hold on. These are... Okay, I'm doing my best. Hang on. These, full cheek snaffle right here. Okay? There is a keeper that goes with this thing. Okay, folks, I'm off topic, right? Oh, let's see. Desmond, come on. Let's see. Can you see what I'm doing there? Good Lord. Okay, right in your nose here. What's the matter with this thing? Here. There. Okay, there it is. That needs something called a keeper, okay? You want to be sure that you get the leather thing that goes on here. Okay, now here's my drawing again. You want to be sure that you never use one of these without getting the leather pieces, please, that go on the top. This crazy camera. You want to make sure that you get... Well, I can't line that thing up. What the world is going on here? Anyway, there is a leather piece. It looks like a leather figure eight that fits on the top stem of that thing, okay? And you want to make sure, speaking of getting the mouth caught in the stirrup, you want to make sure that you hobble the top stem of that full cheek snaffle into the cheek piece of your bridle, okay? In St. Louis in 1968, I saw one of those things go up get caught on a lady's nostril, and that was, you know, kissy, kissy, huggy, huggy. Little horse wins a blue ribbon, cute little granddaughter, and that lady got her nose kind of ripped off there. So, in addition to whatever else the horse could catch his mouth on and hurt himself, that is a danger thing. Okay, they're off topic. There I go. So, I'm going to be, okay, I'll put it right back on topic. I'm getting appropriately firm on anybody who doesn't use those bits properly. Okay, try to save some damage there. To say nothing, there's another thing I want to be appropriately firm about, and that is going up on your horse. Going up on your horse. Oh my goodness! Hang on a second. Oh, I hate to have you see me like this. This is just temporary. It's going up on your horse mounted to another horse and letting your horse put their nose and face in the face of another horse. Look, just don't do that, please. It's until you've seen a horse that just comes right up into position with the equine hello. Put that hoof right through your friend's Makati and get that front leg caught in the bridle, caught in the reins and the Makati of the horse that you just went up to say, let your horse just go up to say hello to. That is such an avoidable, horrible thing to be a part of on either end. Though, if you're on the horse that does it or you're riding the horse that has that done to, that is a really a bad one. So please discipline yourselves and do not. You see somebody coming up to stand next to you with a horse you don't know, and your horse doesn't know that horse, and that anxiety comes up in both of them, and they start to, they sort of grow up and want to have the big hello. Why don't you just turn them loose and let them do that on their own? That way you can have a much better chance of hanging out and having a conversation with somebody safely. I'm going to be firm on that. Okay, now back to the firmness on the behavior of the horses. The lesson in firmness is going to be taken much more constructively and used much more frequently and understood much more thoroughly by the horse that is not set up to fail by someone who needs to habitually be in the process of being firm with horses. So let's first of all make sure that your appropriate firmness is connected to a real reason to be firm. You watch your participation and see whether or not the setup, that the circumstances that bring about the behavior you don't want, that you have nothing to do with that, okay? Firming up on a horse that's too close cannot happen if your hand is 8 inches from the bottom of the halter. If you think that horse is too close, then it's a good idea to get at the other end of the rope yourself. Okay? It just, you'll see when you start paying attention to who firms up when, is that most of the time, the firming up, the hardness, the kick, the throwback, the flag in the face, the whip on the shoulder, the whip on the cannon bones, the jerk on the mouth, is generally administered by somebody who is too close themselves. And the horse, the life comes up, and they get inextricably involved in a contest and in a battle that they don't understand. They are locked into you. You firm up, and the life comes up, and they try to get away, and you don't let go. What was the point of getting firm? You hold them into pressure. You discipline them in cross ties. They are not going to learn anything except the futility of trying to respond with life and by putting distance between you. So this is one thing, is that before we start talking about techniques of appropriate firmness and behavior that is going to be ultimately understood by the horse and processed as a real lesson, you've got to understand whether or not the need to correct is what's driving your participation in firmness. Okay? So setting the horse up to succeed so no corrections are necessary, in summary, is what my deal is all about. And if you are working with me, or you know me, or hanging out with me as a friend or a student or an auditor at a clinic, or in these sessions that we're doing here, it's all the same thing for me here. Let's set the horse up to understand what's wanted. Let's not inadvertently or unconsciously set him up to fail, because the definition of horse trainer that we understand is fixing a horse that's doing the wrong thing. You see? Let's teach him what the right thing is. If we teach him what the right thing is, then there's nothing to correct. Right? It's the same with children. It's the same with dogs. That's why I mentioned what I did the other day. A about housebreaking a dog. Okay? There are reasons dogs pee in the house. You start studying dog behavior and understanding pack mentality. You understand how animals learn. Maybe that's a good time to get that animal. But to just throw our fantasies and our dreams about horse owning or dog owning or raising children for that matter without any remote idea of what's involved. You will find out what's involved, but if the project is not approached from the position of having a goal of mutual satisfaction and contentment at the end of the exercise in mind, then what's going to end up happening is that you're going to find out a whole lot more about yourself in the process of trying to train a dog or a horse with no experience or raise a family with no help or input from others or no research or thought about it beforehand. There's no judgment that is required from me about people who work that way. I can only say that what I've observed is it's the long way around. There's a lot of information available and wonderful information. We've got, look at this. I'm sitting here in New Hampshire talking to you wherever you are. It's an amazing time. Whoops. I just ran into that muscle again. It's an amazing time in history to be trying to learn anything. It's a wonderful time because almost anything you're trying to understand or trying to learn about is going to be either written about, filmed, or spoken about by people who might know another part of that focus or another part of that topic that you haven't thought about yet. So I really think that appropriate firmness is going to be something that is a lifelong evolution for all of us. We're going to be able to learn about ourselves, learn about the horse in front of us. I think one of the great things to do is to just take a breath, put a little extra space in that lead rope, hand the lead rope to someone else if the frustration and heat of the moment is climbing up your back. You got sweat running down both arms and the back of your neck, and your jaw is tight, and you're about ready to knock a hole through a wall. That is not the time to be holding a lead rope or a child. No, it's not. Unless you're at a point where the lessons in those experiences have not been stark enough or upsetting enough or distressing enough to cause you to think about making a change. And I could just say it could be that horses aren't for everybody. It could be that maybe a pony would be better. Or not having the full responsibility for the horse. Maybe just going out trail riding on other people's broke horses or taking a vacation in Montana or Wyoming or going through the Serengeti. If you wanted to do that, you can go horseback riding anywhere in the world now on horses that aren't yours. Maybe to have the horse owning experience isn't necessary. Maybe just the enjoyment of somebody else's well-broke horse would be the best place to start rather than coming up daily into the unpleasant realization that you haven't got the skills you need. It's no test that you have to pass. It's okay to figure out and to say, my gosh, this is not for me. I don't have the time, I don't have the stomach for it, I haven't got the patience, and I never will, and I'm not going to put myself through what it's going to take to be somebody other than I am today. Sell the horse, move on, enjoy your life. I mean, there's a lot of other things to do besides spend your days unhappily engaged with anyone or anything. Animal, human, enterprise, pursuit. If you are in a position and you're fortunate enough to be able to choose what you want to do in a day or with your life, make a choice that puts a smile on your face. That's what I would say. These topics are going to be coming up for us again, tangentially with other subjects. I'm going to conclude this session now There is still more to talk about that I'm not going to talk about now, but I think that there's probably enough, and to focus on self-awareness. And thank you, Joanne. Yeah, knowing where our strengths are, knowing where we need to improve, and having the humility and the courage to go forward and spend time around people who appear to have and may have more information, more knowledge, more experience than you do, does not mean that you are diminished by seeking it out. It just means that you're smart. It means that you've got an appetite for improvement, an appetite for change. You're going to follow your passion, and you're going to get better at what you do without having to suffer the consequences of taking on the wrong horse and having him actually stop you in your tracks because it was one horse too many to respond to in a way that is emotionally driven and violent. So these are the things that we can keep in mind. You know how to reach me, ridewell@lesliedesmond.com. You can visit my website if you like. My YouTube account now has everything loaded from August through January on it, and we're going to, thank you Jackson from Iowa, to load these last few segments that I put up here for you. I wish all of you a good night, and we'll see about doing some more reading together in the future.